Live, it looks. As always, if you guys are watching this live in real time, please put something in the chat box. Tell me that you can hear me. All my indicators here are suggesting that you can indeed hear me, but some sort of confirmation is not a bad idea. I've been out hunting, so I came back a couple of days ago, and it wasn't entirely clear yet whether I'll be able to do the live stream or not. But we're coming sort of close to the end of the year, which is when I like to revisit a few different topics that are mostly thought exercises, and I just like to think through them essentially, once a year. There are a couple of things that I do this way. Toward the end of the year, I do this if I could have only one type of thing, and there are different ways to approach this, and we'll kind of talk through that a little bit. In the beginning of the year, after SHOT Show, I'm going to rework my recommendations of the recommendation videos. Maybe I'll do them in a live stream form, and I'll update the recommendations on my website. And also, there are a few other things that I want to talk about. As far as if I could have only one, I normally think through this as an entire gun, optic, whatever package. And today I'm probably going to focus a little bit more on the gun aspect of it, because there actually have been some reasonably new developments. Okay, I see there are a few people on there. If you guys can hear me in real time, please post something in the chat box so that I know I'm not talking to myself. And I'm not convinced that I'm seeing the chat box from Facebook, which is interesting. I know there are a couple of people on Facebook. I'm gonna do an experiment. I'll put a comment in the video and see if it shows up in my interface. I'm using this app called Melon. Excellent. So I can see the comments through YouTube. I can see the comments through Facebook. I think we are in good shape. So for those of you here who are here, how many of you have been listening to me talk? Todd Ingram, live free or die trying. That's fair. How many of you were here for last year's discussion of if you could have only one? I'm curious. Mr. Todd Ingram is deep in New Hampshire. Well, vote for General Baldock. Okay. We could use a pickup in the Senate seat from New Hampshire. Right, where was I? Yeah. If you could have only one. The question is vague by intention. Okay, I'm trying to position this as sort of a thought exercise, kind of trying to see how do you. Okay, so Paul says, no, I don't recall last year's discussion. Yeah, it was about, I think it was either late November or December of last year. I had Max from Slev Guns here, and we've had a nice argument. I've invited a few other gun bloggers to join me. One of them is joining us in the comment. Mr. Northwest Guns in here. Good evening. What does the schedule look like? You think you can join me, come on live, or not today? Let's see what Derek says. All right, Mr. Telemann, will you be testing the Burris XTR3 Pro? Yes, I'm supposed to be finally receiving one in the not too distant future. Okay. Why do I not see you? Okay. That's interesting. So, Derek, I don't see how to add you, which is odd. You're not showing up on the stream here, Derek. Okay. I was hoping to have a guest. So, Derek, could you log out and try to log in again and see if that works? I will most certainly add you on if I actually see you here. Paul, but I'm old and I forget a lot of stuff. Welcome to my world. Interesting. Sorry for the delay. I'm trying to figure out where I might be seeing Mr. Northwest Guns. But I don't. How odd. Okay. While Derek hopefully is trying to rejoin us, I'm going to go back with the virtual discussion. Okay, so Burris. So I had a chat with Burris, Director of Marketing, and there are three things I plan to be testing from Burris in the near future. One of them is the XTR Pro. Another one is the XTR3i, the illuminated version of the 3.3 to 18 by 50. And I got into archery this year, so I don't know how many of you guys shoot bow, but I plan to also test the Oracle 2 archery scope. Still don't see Derek, that's ridiculous. All right, apparent technical difficulties, not sure why. So, Derek, I'm going to repost the link one more time, just in case, and send it to you. Okay, Derek, I just messaged you with the link. Let's see if this one works. Okay. So, sounds like nobody remembers last year's discussion, so I'll kind of give you a summary of sorts. Imagine that we're working with the following scenario. Imagine that California gun laws spread around the country like cancer, and you are getting steadily restricted. You were forced to lose the majority of your guns in a tragic boating accident. So you only have one that you need to use for everything, because that's the only that you can have only one, let's say, rifle for now. You can have only one rifle to use for everything that you typically do with a rifle. Okay, what would that be? And the answer, of course, is going to depend on. Okay, Derek, I just sent you the link on Discord as a private message. So I'll post it again in the group as well. It's in the group as well. What was I? Yeah. So you only have one rifle, right? And the answer kind of depends on what you like doing, right? If your primary purpose is, home defense, general purpose blinking, that's just going to be one thing. If you don't really do any of that and you're just a long range guy, that's your hobby, that's all you do, it's going to be a long range rifle of some sort. If you're purely a hunter, nothing else matters, right? It'll be a hunting rifle. What if you do a little bit of all of that, which is basically me? I do general purpose tactical stuff. I hunt. I really, really enjoy long range. I'm fundamentally a long range guy at heart, is there a one gun that can do it all? Okay, I think Mr. Northwest Guns is here. Derek, you ready to be joined? We'll go with a yes. Excellent. Mr. Northwest Guns is with us.
Good evening, everybody.
A few attempts.
Yeah, right.
Good to see you. It's been a little while.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how much of this you missed, but basically I'm setting up a scenario. What would be your one rifle to accomplish everything you do if you can only have one?
That's a hard one.
I know.
Considering if you look behind me.
Okay. If you feel this as an opportunity to brag, I will sometime set this up in front of one of my safes and just keep it open behind me.
Oh, that's only a couple of them. Those are ones I'm working on right now, getting ready for next season. If I had to choose one rifle,
For everything you do with the rifle.
everything. It would be hard caliper wise because it would be down between a 300 PRC and a 3.3 at Lapua Magnum. They're both ballistically very well designed cartridges, but one rifle, I would probably lean more towards the 300 PRC.
Okay, so your choice, because you're primarily a long range competitor, that's all you do.
No, I do PRS also.
Okay.
But
well, that's longer. I mean, that's long range precision shooting, really.
But like I said, the 300 PRC would be my go-to, just because there's a wide range of 30 cal projectiles out there to choose from, and a lot of different choices of powders and excuse me, and between if you're using a Magnum primer or a large rifle primer, depending on what your load is.
Okay. So, do you have a home defense gun?
Yes.
Is it a rifle?
One of them is.
So that's now gone. So is your 300 PRC now serving in that role as well?
Ooh, it can.
Are you planning to shoot it or just club people with it?
Either or. I mean, whatever comes to happen. Probably most likely club them if they're short range.
Yeah. Something like, I mean, home defense is typically short range. If it's a long range home defense, difficult to explain to a judge.
And if I was going to go down to a smaller caliber, I would probably go 308.
In what platform?
Either Savage 110 or a 700.
So you are fundamentally a bolt gun guy.
Yeah, I'd much prefer a bolt gun. Yeah. Less parts, less stuff that can go wrong over a gas gun.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So for me, it's very, very different. Because I do a lot more high-speed stuff than you do. I'm a long-range guy at heart, but I'm sort of a general-purpose shooting junkie. And I do a lot of things. And I also hunt, right? For years, every time, once a year, I would sit and reevaluate this. And the purpose of this reevaluation, to a significant degree, is that I'm trying to see, did anything new come out to change my mind, right? Because every year, there's gun manufacturers push new guns, calibers, etc. On us, right? And they all look wonderful and shiny and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's a good idea to wait 3-4 months and then think about it again, because frequently it's the same bullshit in different packaging.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one after going to SHOT Show for my very first time.
Yeah. So are you coming in January?
Yes.
All right. So good. I'll see you there. But anyhow, so historically, my one gun was usually some sort of a medium light AR-15 chambered in 6.5 Grendel. Because in a pinch, I can do more or less everything with it. I've taken it to AR classes. You can hunt reasonably good sized game with it, and if you want to play at reasonable distances, 1,000 yards or so where I live a little bit at an altitude, it is perfectly capable. More importantly, it also has minimal recoil. You can teach younger shooters to shoot with it, and it can do a lot of things for you. It doesn't quite have the terminal ballistics, obviously, of the larger cartridges. It's not a 1 mile gun. There are people out there who will tell you all sorts of mythical stories about the Grendel and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's mostly bullshit. But it is probably the most balanced and the most efficient thing you can get out of an AR-15 frame, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year, Slav Guns and I had a lively discussion about 6.5 Grendel versus 6 Arc, and it's sort of boiled down to the fact that if you hunt, it's a Grendel. If you don't hunt, 6 Arc is more entertaining at long range. It's a little more efficient, a little flatter, that kind of stuff. Well, fast forward a year. Has that changed? The platform for me has not changed, right? I still want some sort of a moderately lightweight semi-auto that's light enough that I can carry it. Go hunting, short enough where I can move it in comparatively confined spaces, right? And ballistically efficient enough to do a lot of things. But what is long range for me has sort of changed. Okay, because I got into shooting rimfires and subsonic calibers comparatively far away. Hitting something with a subsonic 300 Blackout or something like that at 800 yards is a bitch. Give it a shot. You want a challenge? Shoot at a steel plate with a subsonic round at 800 yards. It's a completely different ballgame. So I spent a long time thinking about 300 Blackout, but not quite enough. A little bit too short range of a cartridge. So what are the new things that we saw that are palpably different in 2022? Well, within the last year or so. So there were two that I can think of, right? One is the introduction of this new 6.8, right. I guess it's 6.8 Fury or 277 Fury, whatever Sig calls it. The new 6.8 by 51 round that the military is switching to.
The 277 Fury and
277 Fury, correct.
I would say the 8.6 Blackout.
And 8.6 Blackout, right? I do not own a 277 Fury, but the concept is very interesting to me because one of the things they do, they basically take a more innovative case, they stuff it with a little bit more, somewhat faster burning powder, and they're getting really, really decent performance out of comparatively short barrels.
Right.
I think they're getting 140 grain bullet, about 3,000 foot per second out of a 14-inch barrel, something like that. That sound about right?
Something like that. I really haven't done too much research on.
I looked at it a little bit, and basically, my basic conclusion was that I'm getting essentially the same trajectory, ballistics, etc., out of a 16-inch barrel 277 Fury at that high pressure as I would out of 22-inch 6.5 PRC at normal pressures.
I think the whole reason for the 277 Fury was to get the same velocity and pressures out of a 270 cartridge as you would have like a 270 Wisdom or something like that, but in more of a three-way bolt face and in a short action.
Correct. That's roughly it. Now, I will sort of go on a record that as far as a general purpose cartridge for the military, I think it's a fundamental mistake. That may be a completely separate discussion altogether. But for people like me, as a general purpose round to do a little bit of everything, that is actually very appealing.
See, I could see that cartridge being very well in a very high BC bullet and replacing the 308 in a short action sniper rifle.
Well, I mean, that's sort of what it's supposed to be doing, right? And not so much necessarily. The sniper stuff seems to have moved on to bigger things, the 300 Norma, etc. Where this 277 Fury, 6.8, whatever, by 51 is going to shine is in a DMR rifle.
True.
Yeah, an accurate
I can see
semi-auto.
that.
And another thing that the military seems to be doing is that they're natively issuing every one of these with a suppressor. So there is really a big need to keep the barrel comparatively short. Okay. The reason why I'm not so convinced it's such a great choice for the military is that it seems like our military is always is fighting, last year's war, as they always do. They needed more range in Afghanistan. I don't know, where did you deploy?
2003.
To Afghanistan?
No, I was in Somalia.
Okay. So you were not in that kind of a fun place. So there was a basic consensus that 56 at the distances you had in Afghanistan, shooting across valleys, etc., just wasn't good enough. Didn't go through body armor well enough. We didn't encounter too much of it there, but clearly didn't have the energy. So we decided that we're going to fix that in time for the next conflict that is likely to be entirely different, right? And we ended up with a rifle that is 2 pounds heavier, and for the same weight of ammo, we're carrying now 40% less ammo. And for the main power competition, I'm not so convinced this is such a good idea. There could have been some sort of a compromise solution that would not decrease your firepower nearly quite as much. Conceptually, it's as if we're going back to the army of trained marksmen, but we're not. They're not training marksmanship any better. If anything, it's getting worse.
Right.
So I'm not so convinced it's such a great thing for the military. But once again, for the hobbyists like us, who actually spend a lot more time shooting than an average soldier, to put it mildly, it's a wonderful thing, and you can do a lot in a compact package. So the first question I had, my original choice, which would have been a 16-18-inch barrel 6.5 Grendel, is it sufficiently well replaced by a slightly heavier but clearly ballistically superior 277 Fury with a 14.5 16-inch barrel, whatever I can make legal, do a pin muzzle device, something like that.
I would probably still stick with like the 18-inch.
Yeah.
In either one of those
I'm
platforms.
gonna pop a suppressor on it, right? Once you pop a suppressor on it, barrel length starts becoming a problem.
Okay. No, true.
I have a 6 arc right now with a suppressor. It's a short suppressor and all that, and it works well enough. But I could shave off a couple inches. Haven't well heard that, right? That would probably be better. Okay. So that was my first consideration. Does this new 6.8 replace the Grendel in my heart? And it's a purely theoretical exercise for me, because usually when I discuss these guns, I first buy them and mess with them, then I talk about them. I do not yet own a 6.8. Once ammo becomes available, I will. So that was the first question. Then was another question, and in my mind, that I was trying to resolve, but we have a couple of comments here that I want to address, and then we'll move on. All right. All right, Mr. Ralph Proudfoot, like you, is a long-range guy. He likes his F open rifle in a 284. Those are wonderful, actually. Paul points out that while rather antisocial, clubbing people is viscerally satisfying. Yes, it is. I'm a lifetime martial artist. I absolutely share that. Sometimes this is the best way to release your frustrations. Then again, I had a grappling practice earlier today, and that does not release frustrations. Quite the opposite. I'm not a good grappler.
You need to shoot a 33XC. That just releases all frustration. And it's just so much fun.
I've been shooting a 338 lately a lot, just not that one. We'll get to that in a moment. March 1 to 10 shorter planned for review. I thought I did one. I need to look for it. It's been in my list of recommendations. I like the scope. It has some limitations, but it's a very, very flexible design. You're not a low power variable guy, are you, Derek? No. Well, nobody's perfect. Okay, that's interesting. This you might know more about. So Mr. Chen was looking at the 224 Grendel. 90 grains at 2,900 foot per second looks better than 6 arc for target. Maybe. I haven't looked at the ballistic performance of that 90 grain 224 bullet. Have you ever played with the neck down Grendel small cases, that kind of stuff? I know you've messed with 6 arc.
No, actually, I haven't messed with 6 arc
I
yet.
thought you were gonna do a bolt gun 6 arc to do PRS with.
Well, so the one I have behind me, you see with the stainless barrel on it, that's actually got a bulk, a 6 arc bolt face coming for it. That'll be out in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And then I want to build a 6 arc gas gun to shoot in precision gas gun series. I've got the powder, started getting parts for it. Problem is trying to find brass for the damn thing. But the 224 Grendel, Kenny over at Desert Precision Gunworks, he actually plays around with the 224 Grendel and a bolt gun. I just don't know if he's getting those velocities, if he's looking into a gas gun or a bolt gun with those velocities.
So you can get that in a bolt gun. I think you'd have a very hard time getting that in an AR-15. Look, so various Wildcats based on the Grendel case have been around for a long time. There was 2 to 3 AR Turbo, AR Turbo Plus, 6mm Turbo Plus. There's a bunch of them that people have been shooting. 2,900 foot per second means with whichever platform, either lots of pressure or a very long barrel, and even then it gets a little bit iffy. If you are willing to play with the pressure and hand load and all that, it's possible you'll get a 224 Grendel that is superior in a way for target shooting than 6 arc. But I am not so convinced, partly because in a little bit that I've played with this, admittedly a fairly long time ago, the heavy for caliber 6mm bullets were a lot more consistent. And I have a strong suspicion that what it comes down to is the BC variation bullet to bullet. Heavy 224 bullets that I've played with in the past, while generally quite good, seem to exhibit notable BC variation. When you start shooting fairly far away, the ballistic coefficient consistency, bullet to bullet, plays a huge role. Okay. So if I was trying to get the most long-range performance out of the basic Grendel case, for target shooting, obviously, I would really be looking at 6 arc or one of the 6mm based Wildcats, simply because you will do better with bullets, in my opinion. But if you don't hunt, like I said, 6 arc or 224 Grendel or something like that, would actually not be a bad option. Right. Mr. Boom Country Hydrographics is here from North Dakota. I don't think I've seen you here before.
That's Ryan. He came with me to SHOT Show last year.
Okay, now I know who that is. Well, thank you for watching, Ryan. And Jared, who was also with us at SHOT Show for a little bit there, and I haven't seen Jared for a while, has a really good question. I'm still wondering whether the 6mm arc will ever take off in popularity. Was its introduction during the pandemic its undoing? I thought it was actually doing fairly well, no?
It's still doing fairly well. Manufacturers are actually starting to chamber the rifle in now, and more companies have jumped on barrels. It's starting to pick up in the precision gas gun world. But once again, it's going to be down to if you want actual 6-arc brass, or you are going to fire form either 220 Russian, 7.62 by 3.9, or 6.5 Grendel. So it depends on how much work you really want to put into it to get into that platform.
Well, I have a good amount of 6-arc Hornady ammo. I try not to hand load the cartridges that I can comfortably get, because hand loading takes time and I have a lot of cartridges. Didn't I hear recently that Lapua is going to stop making 6.5 Grendel brass?
Yeah, they're not going to stop. They're going to postpone production.
Postpone production.
Yeah, so
if you really want to be serious about long range hand loading, you kind of need high quality brass. So you need Lapua, Norma. Who else is good?
Peterson.
Peterson, right? Um,
Starline.
Starline's pretty good. Do any of them make 6 arc or 6.5 Grendel cases?
Starline makes 6.5 Grendel cases.
Okay, so you'll have, so if Lapo stops, you'll have some sort of an option. I'm kind of with you on this. I think 6 arc made a big splash because all the gun tubers sort of immediately adopted it, started talking about it, etc. But it does mean the industry was there, ready for mass adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And also with all the pandemic stuff happening, a lot of people had other problems on their minds than adopting new calibers.
Right.
6 arc, because it is backed by Hornady, is likely to do well. And for a lot of people, I think it will replace, in many ways, 6.5 Grendel to a fairly significant degree. Another thing to keep in mind is that as the US military is shifting away from 556, the place that 556 has as the predominant AR-15 cartridge may not be permanent,
Mm-hmm.
for all we know. So something is going to become the predominant cartridge for small frame semi-automatics. It may be 56 for quite a long time longer, maybe 56 forever. I don't know. But whatever cartridge replaces it, if that replacement occurs, has to be something that's seriously backed by a seriously large company. Not that many options. There's Hornady, there's Federal, Winchester.
I think if Hornady just released the go-ahead from other ammo manufacturers, you would start seeing more 6-arc stuff happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't ever think you'll see 6.5 Grendel go away by any means.
Probably not, but I think it's going to become a little bit. It's going to go back to being a very niche cartridge. It was kind of getting some general popularity, and then Hornady came up with 6-arc.
Right.
Grendel was going mainstream because Hornady started making ammo for it, but Hornady decided to switch gears and back to 6-arc. So I think Grendel is going to go back to being a little bit more niche, and 6-arc is probably going to take its place as the general purpose AR-15 cartridge. But to answer your question, Jared, I don't think we know if there is an undoing or not. We are out of the pandemic. Given the political situation, I'd give it a couple of years, and we'll see. Okay, I would like to point out that I am moving up in the world because I am seeing spammers. That is a new high or a new low, for me, depending on how you look at it. All right. Can we kick the spammer? Interesting, I don't have the controls to this interface to kick out the spammer. Let me see if I have a... No. Oh, interesting. Okay, Derek, you can pontificate about something. I'm going to try to pop in through YouTube interface and see if I can get rid of that idiot.
Okay.
Tell me what your thoughts are on 6-arc versus 6.5 Grendel.
So, I have very little experience with the Grendel. I was a big fan of the cartridge when Alexander Arms launched it years ago, because it was supposed to be a 1,200 yard cartridge out of a gas gun, and at the time I had my business when we were building custom AR-15s, so you got a nice long range cartridge, but nothing in a big platform. So the 6.5 Grendel does have its niche. I see a lot of varminers, like coyote hunters. Some people use it for prairie dogs at long range up north. It has its place. There's some people still using it in precision rifle precision rifle matches, especially in gas guns. The plus side, if you already shoot 6mm in PRS bolt series, is that going to the 6-arc won't be that much of a change other than brass and maybe powder, because pretty much the same 6mm projectile that you have is being used from your gas gun to your bolt gun. So it's a nice thing because you can just buy in bulk and stick with one specific thing. But Other than that, I mean, they're both good cartridges. I can see the niche for each one, but all in all, I don't see 6.5 Grendel going anywhere. And with the U.S. DOD and other law enforcement agencies and military adopting the 6 arc, I don't see that going on anywhere either.
I think that's probably as good of a summary as I could have made. 6.5 Grendel will move a little bit more toward hunters because it is the best rounded hunting cartridge out of a small frame AR. And 6 arc is probably going to take over whatever people thought they would be doing it with Grendel in law enforcement, if anything.
Now, there is one other cartridge I would bring up, and it's not a very popular cartridge, and I'm surprised it never took off when it came out, was the 6.8 SPC.
Well, I can tell you why it didn't take off.
To me, it had the best of both worlds. It was a great short and mid-range cartridge. It had the thump that you got out of a 760 by 3.9, but it had the range for as a 5.56. But like I said, it wasn't a cartridge that took off, and you really don't see it much anymore.
Oh, do you want to know why it took off?
Sure.
Because Federal, when they backed, and Remington, when they backed that cartridge, when they introduced it, they lied to the tune of 200 foot per second. Released a bunch of high pressure ammo to gun writers that blew up a few guns. Revised the chamber dimensions twice or three times that I can think of. And in the end, never got anything that was close to publicized velocities. Even without those publicized velocities around, the short to medium range worked pretty well.
So it's as terrible as the Valkyrie was.
Yeah, same people, by the way, same team.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Tutu for Valkyrie, the same business. Released the cartridge to great fanfare, never got it to shoot without issues or accurately in semi-autos. Otherwise, yeah, it had great progress, kind of like Tutu for Grendel. Supposedly heavy 22 caliber bullet and all that sort of stuff, and it's essentially that. So as far as in the last decade or so, as far as introducing new cartridges goes, Horde has been doing it better than Federal or Winchester by a fairly significant margin. All the PRC cartridges you can think of, the 6 Arc,
the
6.5
Creedmoor,
6.5 Creedmoor, 6 Creedmoor, etc. These are all Horned introductions. Okay?
Right.
And they seem to have been doing it better. So Rick Hamby is telling us that he's been very successful with a 6mm AR turbo at mid and long range matches. Well, that's basically a 6 arc. For practical purposes, just a wildcat version of it. So that is your confirmation. And let's see, I have a few other things. And then I want to catch up on the comments, and then I'm going to go back to my only one discussion. I have another diatribe ready. All right. Bullet variation, just buy Burger and forget it. Maybe I'm biased. Burger is consistent. I will grant you that. But even Burger is more consistent with 6mm bullets.
I can debate with the 6mm bullet thing.
You what?
I can debate with the 6mm bullets because I've had really good luck with 108s and I've had really good luck with 105s, Burgers. So,
yeah. All right, Mr. Hydrographics loves his 6.5 Grendel. I was an early adopter of 6.5 Grendel. I had my first Grendel AR from the very first batch that Bill Alexander made. It didn't function, so I sold it, and then I bought it again. Still have it. All right, Mr. Jared is still waiting for me to show up wearing a Night Force shirt.
that ain't never going to happen.
I will say this. I'm not paying for one. If they give me a free one, I'll wear it during one of the live casts. Okay, Randall goes length of ammo than Hornady hurts at 6 arc. That is correct. Hornady needs to release it into the wild a little bit better. Mr. Chan. 6 arc always having ammo supply issues, even the brass, except for projectiles. Yes, but it was, as Jared correctly pointed out, was released during the pandemic. Supply chain has been shit. Let's see what happens in the next year or two.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Sean Marcus, is there a better hog, deer, coyote gun than an 18-inch proof carbon fiber suppressed AR-15 out to 300 yards, considering weight and recoil? Possibly, yes. Well, AR-15, yeah. I believe so, and we'll get to that momentarily.
That's where I would jump in and say a 300 Blackout, but
8.6. That my next diatribe is going to be about 8.6 because I'm switching to that, and I don't switch easily. All right, Mr. Hamby, 6 arc is a new kid and should do well. I will rebarrel my 6 AR turbo to that. Yeah, ballistically they're essentially identical. Okay. All right, Mr. Okay. Okay, that's an interesting question. So Rick also says Grendel will die once everyone figures out that 105, 108 6mm bullets fly better than 123 in 6.5mm. For target shooting, yes. For hunting, I do not think 6 arc is going to replace the Grendel. 6 arc is at best a class 1 game cartridge. 6.5 goes into class 2. Given how many people shoot pigs out there, I would expect 6.5 Grendel to survive for a while. Okay, somebody read the title. Answer to the question: 308 are the guys from medium distance. True sniper, by the way, 24, 1 and 10 for 168. Not a bad answer, but I disagree. Right, what else do I have? All right. Randall Carey thinks that the Valkyrie is not dead. I would like to hear an explanation of that one. I mean, it's not officially dead, doesn't mean it's not actually dead. Okay. Ilya, have you tried the 277 Sig Fury? So we just talked about it about 15 minutes ago. I have not, but I plan to. It's absolutely on my list. I'm quite intrigued by that cartridge. Let's see what else we got. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I like what I'm seeing in the new 7 PRC. I am still kind of struggling to figure out why we have it, personally. I'm not sure what 7 PRC, given its length, gives me that quite a few other cartridges don't. So
I'd rather have a 7 SOM. Same ballistics, same velocity, out of the same bullet, but in a short action, and it's more consistent.
Correct.
From what I'm saying.
I don't know if it's more consistent or not, but the overall length of the 7 PRC baffles me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
What can the 7 PRC do that my 300 PRC can't?
Well,
that should be the question.
It can produce less recoil.
I don't really have recoil out of that gun at all, but
that's because it's a 68-pound gun.
21, but okay.
Yeah. So you and I think about gun weight differently, right? The gun that I'm heading out into the field with is, I'm going to share a picture. And that's going to be a nice segue into what I want to talk about next.
But you're only possibly shooting that gun maybe once or twice a day. I'm shooting it 100 to 160 times in a 2-day period.
Who knows what this is?
That's a Q.
All right. What is it chambered for?
308.
Nope.
8.6 Blackout now.
That's correct.
Well, originally it was chambered in 308.
Oh, I still have one in 308.
Oh,
okay. I have 3 different fixes. I have the original so I still have my original 308 that is serial number 003.
You like those guns as much as I love my Kelblies.
Pretty much. I'm a huge fan of the fix. But anyhow, so this was chambered for 8.6 Blackout. I'm going to go out on a mule deer hunt with it next Friday. I just came back from a mule deer hunt where a friend of mine had a tag and I was trying to help. That was not successful. I am pretty sure we saw every kind of animal possible, of whitetails of both sexes, elk of both sexes, ton of mule deer does. The one thing we're there for the mule deer buck. I'm moderately certain I saw one in the rearview mirror as we're finally leaving, unless they show me his middle hoof. So I'm gonna go try to get that bastard in a week or so. A week later, I'm gonna take the same gun and go shoot a cow elk with it. Okay. And then in December, I'm gonna take that same gun and go shoot a pig with it.
So what is the maximum effective range you've gotten out of that 8.6 Blackout?
It depends on what you mean by effective range, because 8.6 Blackout, so 277 Fury that we discussed a little bit earlier is very innovative. So is 8.6 Blackout, but in a very, very different way.
Do you have enough terminal ballistics to knock an animal down at 500 yards with it?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm... Because I don't look at... So the 8.6 Blackout didn't really hit my... my whole hype for it at SHOT Show and everybody was talking about it, and it just really wasn't for me.
It's not for you. It's for me though, and I'll explain why.
Yeah. I knew you were gonna.
Yeah. So I've known of 8.6 Blackout for a little over 3 years. Right. So the one whenever I go to New England, New Hampshire for work, I always make it a point to swing by for a few hours, bring a bottle of nice bourbon with me. I get along with engineers at Q really well. And one time I come over there just to bullshit. They're real friendly guys. And the chief engineer there, he's a VP of engineering. His name's Ethan, a really nice guy. I really like him, smart guy. Always learn something when I go there. He goes, "Hey, you want to check this out?" I go, "Sure." And he hands me a barrel, just a barrel, right? I go, "Okay, it looks like a barrel. All barrels look roughly similar." Look through it. And I look through it, and it comes down to what Mr. MAF blogger Danny posted. I look through it, and the rifling in there doesn't look like rifling. It looks like threading. It looks like the inside of a threaded pipe, like for a quarter 24. So I'm looking at that, going like, okay.
It's like a 1 in 3 twist, isn't it?
It's 1 in 3 twists. The barrel he showed me was actually 1 in 1 twist.
Oh, Jesus.
But they couldn't make it commercial. They couldn't get anybody to make the barrel that fast. They wanted to spin it as fast as humanly possible. And I think they took a 1 in 1 barrel twist to Brian Litz to do some BC testing not long ago. So I'm waiting for Brian to release it. He finally started showing teaser pictures. I predict that he's going to find out that the BC changes when you twist the bullet that fast. But anyhow, so why do I find it so interesting? I went and, being good old nerdy me, I went and made a calculator how much rotational energy you get with different bullets depending on muzzle velocity and depending on the barrel twist rate. And then I went to the guys at Q trying to make sure I'm not that I don't trust them, but I kind of wanted to see that my independently derived numbers are close to theirs. I ended up being within 5%. And they are modeling the actual bullet in SolidWorks and all sort of stuff. I'm doing it on the back of the napkin, essentially. So I believe the numbers. And the numbers are really interesting. Rotational energy is extra energy. It's not as much energy as people say it is. But then I got some pictures from Barnes bullets where they did testing with their monolithic bullets, with the TSXs, shot 338 bullets. 8.6 is just 338. Shot out of 1 in 10 inch barrel, like a 338 Federal, and out of 1 in 3 inch barrel. And the bullet expansion with the faster twist is absolutely remarkable. And then they did a bunch of testing at different distances, different velocities, different animals that looked at bullets. What that fast twist rate does, other than making subsonic rounds truly accurate, even for supersonics, what it does, it makes the bullet open up and cut through tissue incredibly more efficiently, even at much lower velocities than you get with conventional twist rates. And what it does, it gives you a pretty mild 358 caliber cartridge where you can use long ballistically efficient bullets and that maintain their lethality to much lower velocities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's kind of an interesting thing. In terms of felt recoil, I think it's a little milder than the 308. I'm shooting a 200 grain bullet at about 2,200 foot per second.
Okay.
Right now, I'm messing with Badlands ballistics bullets with Barnes. There are a few others. If I can't get the Badlands to shoot accurately enough for my purpose, it's already accurate enough for hunting. Then I'll try other stuff. Badlands, 200 grain bullet has really nice BCs. The G1 BC is 0.55, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's a light for caliber bullet.
Right.
But that's my hunting bullet. Why I really like this thing is because I can do nice things with a supersonic bullet for general purpose hunting and things like that. And for what I like in long range right now, shooting subsonics very far away, this thing is the most accurate subsonic cartridge I've seen to date. Because, what happens with the subsonics is that you can't push the bullet faster, right? You have to stay at about the same 1,050 foot per second velocity. So if you want more ballistic efficiency, well, get a longer bullet, right? That's pretty much all you can do. I used to have some here. I think I took them away somewhere. If you take a long ass 338 300 plus grain bullet and push it at the same subsonic velocity, at the same distance where my subsonic Blackout has 50 milliradian of drop, 8.6 Blackout has 30 milliradian of drop, and it has lower dispersion. So my particular long range itch is kind of scratched by that. I can hunt with this thing. And there is also a ton of development happening for expanding terminally efficient bullets that open up at subsonic speeds. Discrete ballistics is doing it, guerrilla ammunition is doing it. That's kind of a big thing. So all of a sudden, this is now a nice quiet, since I'm planning to run with a suppressor. Q is about to release theirs. Home defense gun. Because for home defense gun, 300 PRC, all this sort of stuff doesn't do it for me. I would like to retain some parts of my hearing into comparatively old age, whatever's left of it. I already lost my smell to COVID. I wanted to at least be able to hear stuff. Okay. And that's why for years, 6.5 Grendel in the AR-15 was my general purpose choice, and I might be changing it to the 8.6 Blackout in one of these newer, smaller action, but 308 size action AR-10 type guns. For now, I'm messing with the 8.6 Blackout in a bolt gun. That's what this is. I'm going to reconfigure it a little bit. I'll put a longer handguard on there so I can comfortably use it with a thermal clip-on, because subsonic Blackout, the 8.6 Blackout suppressed with a thermal, is a great pig gun. Okay.
What scope you got on there?
Pardon me?
What scope do you have on there?
This is a Tangent Theta 3-15 by 15.
Oh, okay.
What did you expect from me?
Anything but a Night Force.
I don't actually. So people think that I don't like Night Force scopes. That is actually not correct. I really like attackers. Okay. I don't like a lot of the other scopes. Attackers I like quite a lot. Okay. So that's a Tangent Theta TT315M. It's about 27 ounces, so it's a really nice crossover scope.
I have not played with a Tange of Theta yet.
You really should.
Someday.
Yeah.
But I do have that new 3 to 18 by 50 element coming, so I'm happy
Oh,
with that.
the Titan?
Yes.
Yeah, I have that one. It's really nice.
And
So, are you already relocated to the Southwest, right?
yes.
Have you run into Shane already or not yet?
No.
He's out in your neck of the woods.
From Element?
Hmm?
Oh. Okay.
Well, so Element will actually have a booth at Chat Show this year for the first time.
Oh, very nice.
Element. And I'll introduce you.
Okay. Well, I used to work with Shane, but he stopped replying, and I got a new person I'm working with now over at FX. So,
Okay. All right.
but yeah, so they want to send me out the new 3 to 18. I'm actually looking forward to seeing if they're going to debut that new scope they keep hinting around at SHOT Show this year.
It's going to be a Chat Show this year.
Okay, then I am really looking forward to that.
Yes, it's a nice scope. I've spent quite a lot of time with the prototype.
Okay. Is the glass better than the Titan? That's all I want to know.
Yes.
Okay.
But the price is also not like the Titan.
Oh, no, I didn't think it would be.
But it is a very, very nice scope with some really... On the inside, there are some very clever, innovative things happening there.
Okay.
When it's all released, I'll give you the background.
Okay, no problem.
All right, so let's. There are a few questions here. Let's go through them.
Okay.
I don't want to go too far behind. Then we'll see. Okay, so this is it goes back to original discussion, and I agree with this one. So why Rick doesn't like 7 PRC? That it should have been a necked up 6.5 PRC, and I agree with that for hunting. 7 PRC, if it was just necked up 6.5, would make a lot of sense. A bit bigger bullet, a bit better, and now it's a sheep and elk cartridge. You can do a lot of fun things with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they decided to size it so it's optimal for the Tikka T3X action, and I'm not convinced it was the right move. Okay, so that's an interesting question. So what's the shortest length barrel would you do 8.6 Blackout? It's a good question. So I have 2 barrels for it. I have a 7-inch barrel and a 16-inch barrel. I started out with a 7 and I was shooting more subsonics, although supersonics were actually not bad at all. Now there is new regulation going through ATF on braces. I don't think they'll get away with it. I think they'll introduce it and they'll get sued and they'll have to pull back. But it's going to be a couple of years while all that nonsense plays out. I don't know if you've been paying attention to all that brace stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Derek. I don't know what your take on it is. I'm quite curious. But until they figure out all this brace business, I'm probably going to play it safe and stay with 16-inch barrels. Generally, 8.6 Blackout was developed with a 12-inch barrel length in mind as being sort of the Goldilocks. You get enough velocity with supersonics, and it's short enough where with a suppressor, you're 12-inch barrel, 7-8-inch suppressor, you're under 20 each for the entire barrel assembly. It's a nice handy gun.
Mm-hmm.
The catch is that I don't want to Form 1 anything. I don't like to deal with SBRs. So I want to see what happens with the whole pistol brace business.
Right.
Where do you think it's going to go?
It's hard to say with this administration and the way the ATF thinks that they can make laws and do whatever the fuck they want. I think they should just leave the whole thing alone and just back off from it. They regulated it, they approved it years ago, and now they want to go back and just mess with everybody. So honestly, it's a lot of bullshit for no reason.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of bullshit, yes. No reason, I'm not so sure. I mean, if you assume that their purpose is to do the, how you throw a frog and boiling water, it jumps out.
Mm-hmm.
Throw a frog in cold water at slowly increased temperature, you end up with frog soup, right? So I mean, their general purpose is a death by 1,000 cuts, to encroach on a variety of different Second Amendment rights, one little bit at a time, until we wake up one morning and go back to the original premise of this: you can only have one gun, and even that is limited.
Right.
Right. So there is a purpose to what they're doing. The question is whether they will get away with it, and whether, when we get into 2024, all this stuff gets reversed. Right? If it's an ATF ruling, then the executive branch can also reverse it. If you want
Right.
something that's difficult to reverse, it needs to go through Congress.
I think you're gonna see what's gonna go happen with the midterms is where everything's gonna fly.
Well, we'll see. We'll know next week, right?
Right.
I have a suspicion that if there is indeed a red wave during the midterms, they will start doing as much as possible by executive action as fast as possible, knowing that they have very limited time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. Okay, there is a discussion here about BS. We're supposed to be live. I'm lost in what part we're talking. I don't know. Let's go back to 8.6 Blackout. So who else besides Faxon is doing 8.6 Blackout? Is the Faxon accurate enough for you stops? Faxon actually makes pretty decent barrel. I've had good luck with them. Who else is doing 8.6? There are a couple of other barrel suppliers who are making barrels others, but Faxon partnered with Q for the introduction.
I don't know about A6. I don't know who's making barrels for it. I really haven't been on top of it for the 8.6 Blackout. It's not really anything I'm going to jump on myself. So I really, not being a snob about this subject, I'm learning as you guys all are right now. I didn't go shoot it at SHOT Show. I didn't have a chance to. They actually ran out of ammo by the time I got over there. And on top of it,
Well, come visit. You can shoot it.
I'll bring the 33 with me if that's the case.
Well, sure. I used to shoot 358 Lapua for a long time in the desert, in the first gen Desert Tech.
Oh, nice.
Then I sold that gun when I was moving out of California. So for now, I think Faxon is pretty much the only source for the accurate stuff, and it seems to be accurate enough. 8.6 Blackout has been announced. It is in use. It is slowly proliferating. It's getting, it's getting good publicity. Now you have to keep in mind, 8.6 Blackout is not yet SAMI approved, and I'd be surprised if too many manufacturers are going to jump on board at the moment until there's a SAMI-approved chamber and SAMI-approved cartridge. Once there is, I think we will see more. I will, however, caution you somewhat in that not all barrel makers can easily make a 1 in 3 twist barrel.
Right.
So there will be some barrier to entry. I do not think 8.6 Blackout will fundamentally become as widespread as many other more conventional cartridges, simply because there are also bullet limitations. If you're shooting light, common, lead core bullets at supersonic speeds, quite a few of them will basically blow up upon exiting the barrel. For supersonics, you really should be using monolithic solid copper bullets like the Barnes TSX, etc. So it's really more of a hunting cartridge than anything else.
It is. And yeah. I mean, 300 Blackout had its purpose when it came out.
Correct.
And same reason why I don't have a 300 Blackout is because I don't have it short barreled and I don't have it suppressed. Because that's what the cartridge was designed to
Correct.
do.
Yeah, I would maybe, how many 300 Blackout guns I have? Actually, not that many, only 3 or 4. But I like 300 Blackout quite a lot. I like it suppressed. And my basic take on it is that if this cartridge is good enough to hunt some sort of a reasonably good sized game, it is also a nicely efficient self-defense cartridge. The big question is that can it scratch my itch in terms of shooting far away? And since I got hooked, like I said, on shooting subsonics far away, it kind of does.
Fair enough.
But once again, that's your question. Not a ton of people do 8.6 Blackout yet, but I predict that it will proliferate
I give it
once
another
more
year.
people start hunting with it.
I give it another year because the 6 arc, a lot of companies didn't jump on barrels with that one right off. I think it was like 2 or 3 companies did. Give it a year, you're going to see more 6.8 barrels out there. Or 8.6, sorry.
That's probably reasonable. Do keep in mind that 8.6 Blackout is also backed by Hornady in addition to Q and Faxon, which gives it somewhat higher probability of success. Okay. All right. So there are a few more questions to look through, and we're going to go more into Q&A and see what we can offer.
Okay.
I will just sort of conclude the whole one gun diatribe. And to reiterate, so I stayed with a 6.5 Grendel as a general purpose cartridge in a reasonable weight AR-15 for nearly a decade. And this is the first time in my mind it's getting bumped by 8.6 Blackout and one of the modern smaller frame AR-10s. Okay. Just something to keep in mind. And I'll show you one more picture, just so that you know what I'm talking about. Let's see. So this was a year ago when I went to Q to build my 8.6. They were messing with what will eventually become something like the 8.6 Blackout Honey Badger variant on the bottom. So this is both of these guns, the fix on top and the AR pattern gun on the bottom, have 7-inch barrels. Once this whole business with pistol braces gets worked out, assuming we can still use them and all, my plan is to build a 12-inch barrel semi-auto 8.6 Blackout braced and set up with a suppressor and use that as the one gun for a little bit of everything.
Talk about thumping the night.
Yep. But remember, I can use a 300-something grain expanding subsonic bullet. The neighbors won't even know that somebody walked into my house uninvited. So nobody is going to be there to witness the fact that somebody walked in and never walked out. What was that? Yeah. So that sort of concludes this story. If you guys have your opinions on the one gun, I'm always curious. And let's see what else we have. Okay. Back to optics. I'm curious about this one. What about Night Force reticle designs? So what about Night Force reticle designs? MIL-XT and MIL-C are good reticles. I don't have any other strong opinions about other reticles that are Night Force, but Night Force also owns Horus, and I have a lot of strong opinions about Horus reticles, none of them positive. Yeah. You look like you want to say something.
Oh, that's kind of like bringing up the whole conversation with another scope company. I'm not going to, because you'll just go on a 1-hour rant.
Okay. Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. So my AR barrels are not high dollar, and they all shoot sub MOA. Ryan, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All of them shoot sub MOA.
His 6.5 Grendel barrels, they're not a high end one, but high end barrels per se. But they all do really well. I mean, I would say they're a good 3/4.
Yeah, so Grendel is actually a very, very easy cartridge to make shoot accurately, remarkably enough. There's something about that case. Very forgiving.
Even a couple of his 223 ones that he has, they're a solid sub MOA. I've shot him. He's not lying on that one.
Probably. So, what size group? How fast you've been shooting them? Sub MOA is a fairly complicated thing, and another is how many rounds do you have through that gun, right? So I've seen people put together an AR-15, go shoot a bunch of groups, pick one that's sub MOA, proudly announce it as a sub MOA gun. ARs tend to hit the accuracy peaks about 400 to 600 rounds in.
So let me say something about AR-15s.
Yeah.
Everybody's all about accuracy and sub MOA and MOA. When the original platform of the M16 was designed, it wasn't meant to shoot an MOA group.
No,
it was meant to shoot sub of man group at 100 yards. That was the whole theory of that, is to put a small projectile like the 5.56 55 grain or the 62 tungstens at 100 yards. You're going to hit a vital organ in somebody at a sub of man, not sub MOA.
Correct.
So that really kind of bothers me. Me and my friend got into a discussion about that about a month ago when I up in Utah, and me and him really agreed with it because we're both veterans. On that is the platform was designed to shoot sub man, not sub MOA.
That's very, very true. The mil spec guns were usually, I think, what was the requirement for them? I think 3.5 or 4 MOA was the requirement for them. If you put them in a vise, they were supposed to be able to do, I think, better than 4 minutes of angle, and they generally do. It so happens that with a direct impingement gas system, it still runs a little bit dirty, but it's easier to make the gun accurate. And once we got into the civilian world, everybody started making accurate ARs because they can. But I caution you about digging into that too much. I will say, in terms of initial accuracy, before the barrel gets dirty, before it gets too hot, most good quality barrels in the $300 to $400 range actually shoot surprisingly well. I don't know what Ryan has, but that's not terribly surprising. You can go pick up a stainless steel proof research barrel for, if you look for it on sale, find one for about $400. They are consistently sub-MOA barrels.
Another good barrel company that's an under $200 barrel is Roscoe.
No, that one I don't know. But for a couple $100, I've had many good barrels from AR-15 Performance.
Okay.
The guy who owns it is odd, but the barrels are pretty good.
That's all that matters.
All right, it looks like Mr. Billy Truth Bolt couldn't get the video to play live. Interesting. So what else we have here that's interesting?
They've been having their own little discussion over here.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at that. I'm a little lost in it. Okay, Mr. Chan is back in a 7mm. I don't think 7mm works well with short action due to velocity. Not enough powder unless going really fat case. Well,
I can beg to differ with you on that one.
yeah.
Because the 7 SOM, and then if you really want to get into a real good Wildcat cartridge, the 7 Strimmer short mag. And that cartridge has the same velocities and everything out of it as that new 7 PRC.
Pretty much, yes. It's a somewhat fatter case. So I don't have a short fat 7mm, but I have a 300 WSM that I really like. Let's see what else we have. Okay, well, that's actually a very good point. I'm passing on the 8.6 Blackout, not a suppressor guy at the moment. That's a perfectly reasonable point, but still. So there are two parts to it. One, it plays nice with suppressors, but another one is that you get better terminal ballistics at moderate velocities because of the fast twist rate.
I just want to see more stuff come, more information on the 8.6 Blackout coming out on like the 16-inch barrels, maybe 18-inch barrel, and see where it goes from there. It might be something I get on later down the road, but right now I've just got way too much in the 338 Lapuas and the
Well,
33 XCs to play with.
It's not a replacement for the long range stuff. It's basically if you decide that you want to build yourself a general purpose hunting gun,
Oh yeah, I
right?
mean,
Because you want to go join me on a mule deer hunt and spend 6 miles hiking uphill, wearing out your legs. I would recommend that. I used to always recommend 6.5 Creed or 308 to people. I'm leaning toward this because you are basically getting terminal ballistics.
I
With
got
a
my
mounted
7mm lever action I can bring.
Which one?
My 7mm lever action.
That's what you should. My 300 WSM is a takedown Browning BLR. We're gonna have a lever action hunt.
Yeah, mine's a Browning lever action, but it's not a takedown.
Yeah, well, because you're not as cool as I am. I have a sick obsession with takedown guns.
Nothing wrong with that.
Many things wrong with it, but it's not gonna stop me.
Oh, I'm actually going to build another 300 PRC next. So.
Well, eventually I'll need to build one for me. All right, I need to talk about that. Okay, so we have a kind of an optics question here because now we're sort of back into just a Q&A mode. Mr. Chan, does astigmatism make chromatic aberration and other imperfections in optics seemingly worse if not wearing corrections? I have some light astigmatism, but I don't find differences on my scopes, just different diopter settings. It's a good question. It sort of depends on what kind of astigmatism you have. You can just say mild, but there are different forms of astigmatism. And generally, it does not affect you excessively when you're dealing with standard rifle scopes. It does not make chromatic aberrations immeasurably worse. It can make something somewhat blurrier than others, but most of the time, when looking through a conventional scope, if your astigmatism is not too heavy, you will be okay. Are you sensitive to chromatic aberration, Derek?
I do have astigmatism, and it's actually in my right eye. It's in my dominant eye. So my thing I have is I actually have to have my scopes in a little bit closer for an eye relief than what normally scope companies say. Oh, it's a 3.5-inch eye relief. Well, I'm having it about 2.8. And on top of it, my lenses are also a very high definition lens on my glasses. So what you can see and what I can see are going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to see a lot of low glass quality as easily as some of you other guys are. So that's why when I do my scope reviews, I put it, this is on my opinion and what I can see, but what you guys can see might be different.
Well, that generally goes for everybody. Everybody's perception is slightly different. Do you just have astigmatism or also nearsighted or?
Yeah.
So I have mild astigmatism in my right eye and I'm nearsighted. I wear contacts. They correct nearsightedness. They don't correct astigmatism. Right. So with red dots, for example, I see a fuzzy dot, but it's a mild astigmatism, so I work through it. It doesn't cause any major issues. So you can see definition issues with astigmatism, but you're not. But chromatic aberration does not really get worse.
No.
All right, Mr. James Buzz D Clown R is here. Good evening.
Good guy.
All right. Okay, Mr. Billy Truthbold, I have the best I assume argument about calibers. Let's do it. Okay. All right. There is a whole discussion here happening that is completely independent of what we're talking about. Okay. So back to 7 PRC. It really made me rethink long action compared to short action with the length limitations. Short action can only do so much, I guess. 6.5 is the biggest for ultimate performance, in my opinion. I'm not on board with it, as we just discussed. It just depends on how fat of a case you're willing to work with. Right.
I'm not on board for the 7 PRC myself, just because I have a 7mm mag, and if I'm going to build a precision 7mm long action, honestly, the 7mm Rem mag is just as good, in my opinion, than the 7 PRC, other than if you're shooting heavier bullets, like the 180s and up, just go with the 7 PRC. If you're going to shoot the lower ones, the 162 to 173s are the prime for the 7mm mag.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point. Look, like I said, I'm not seeing the purpose in 7 PRC the way they introduced it.
Right.
It doesn't mean there isn't. It just means that I don't see it. With most cartridges, when they introduce it, they make some sort of reasonably compelling case, and then, as we spend some time with it, it may or may not be true. With this one, I'm not starting out seeing a compelling case. Perhaps I'll see one as we move along. At the moment, I'm not so sure.
Right.
That's kind of an interesting question. Back to optics. Seems like Vortex is no longer the amazing value, punching above their weight brand anymore. Is there a new value king out there or up and coming? Well, that's a good question. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I got my very first Vortex optic, and it's right back there on my 243.
Which one is it?
The Venom 5 to 25 by 56. And honestly, for a $500 optic, it's probably one of my favorite ones. I've shot a match with it. I've gone out to 1,000 to 1,100 yards with it. I think, in my opinion, it's probably one of the best starter PRS scopes you can get for the $500 and under budget. The higher end stuff, when you start getting into the razors, I have not played too much with the new 6 to 36. I really want to. I was a big fan of the original razor of the 5 to 20 by 50. When it's starting to come into high, I'm seeing Zeiss coming out with a lot of good stuff lately. And I think Zeiss is going to be a big hit in the precision optics world in the next year.
They're definitely investing a lot in it. But if you're talking about value, where do you get the most for your money? Is there a brand, scope, anything that comes to mind that you think is ahead of the curve?
A lot of people are going to say Arkin. They think Arkins are getting the best for the money. Arkins aren't bad. I'm not going to trash on Arkin. I have one. It's right back there in the box behind me. But I guess it depends on where you stand on value and what your price limit and your budget is where I'm going to put on that one. And if you're 500 under, Arkin and Vortex pretty much sit at that price point. If you're going for the 500 to 1,000 mark, Element has a good scope. They have a couple good scopes in that price limit. And if you're going 1,000 plus to 2,000, you got the Leopold Mark V. You have.
Have you seen a Mark V under 2K without military discount?
A couple days ago. It was 1,900.
Which one?
Was it PRS 1 reticle?
Okay, PR1 5 to 25?
Yes.
That's a good price. They generally go for the lowest key, about 2,100.
Right. And so let's go to the 2,000 to 3,000. You're going to have Zeiss now. You're going to have Leopold. You're going to have Night Force has got a couple good optics in that area. Steiner. It really depends on where you're sitting.
Does not have a ton under 3K, although there's the smaller attacker.
Well, you got the NX8.
I'm not a huge fan of NX8. I think it's a respectable scope for NRL Hunter. It looks like since I first looked at it, they improved it though, so I need to revisit it. General disclaimer.
I've heard the same thing, that they've gone and improved it. What else can I think of? I'm really impressed with the new Zeisses. From what I've read about them, from what everybody's told me. And
you're talking about the S3s or S5s?
It was the S3 and S6, the new ones.
The new ones are S3.
Yeah,
and the ones they introduced a couple of years ago was the S5.
Okay, the new S3 is really nice.
Have you seen it yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Because I haven't yet. I'm supposed to receive one, and then I'll have a better opinion. I don't know.
And
S5 is a nice scope.
and then Leica came out with a PRS scope this year too.
New PRS. They had a PRS scope for 3 or 4 years.
Let me check.
They're talking about 5 to 30 by 56.
Let me check.
Because I've reviewed that quite extensively. It's actually a pretty good scope.
Okay. Because maybe it was new to me, but I looked at it and it looked like a really nice scope.
It's a nice scope. It's been out for a little bit.
Okay.
They have a reticle issue with it.
But I look at value on what you want to set your price on. Me, this next year, I'm really looking heavily at our Athlon.
Avalanche makes nice stuff.
Mainly the Chronos and the ETR 4.5 to 27 by 56.
The ETR is 4.5 to 30 by 56.
Okay, 4.5 to 30. I was close.
Yeah, but my OCD still went up in flames.
So I'm looking at Athlon heavily. I thought about going back to Ride-On, but we'll see how that works.
So Ride-On is an interesting brand, and they just changed ownership and they're kind of revamping some stuff. So it's a wait and see thing. I'm sort of friendly with the guy who does the product development, so I'm curious. They got new stuff coming. We'll see.
Right.
Blackout is now owned by the same company. They have a different marketing team, and I'm quite much happier with them than I was originally. I've got one that should be here tomorrow, Monday, the 2 to 12 by 44 emerge. I like these kind of designs.
I'm going to leave my comments alone about Blackout.
We can talk about that offline. Originally, when they just showed up, I completely ignored them because the guy who was there just annoyed me. Now the team is different, everything is different, so I'm giving them a shot.
Gotcha.
In terms of when you talk about value, as Derek mentioned, you really kind of have to think about what is important to you, right? For example, if you want the most features for the money, Arcane should absolutely be in the conversation. They had some growing pains. I think they're getting better in terms of consistency, right? But if you are talking about consistent performance, sometimes there's not as many features, although the features are not bad. For the money, with the minimum chance of having to send it back, elements kind of has to be in the equation, right? Because if you want an inexpensive variable scope to track, go get an element Helix FFP and go shoot. It's 450 bucks, something like that.
I was going to say, I got a second FFP Helix, and the thing tracks. It's an amazing scope for a $400 scope.
Yep.
I'm
Arcane is better optically, right? But I've seen a lot of I have an Arcane here, which I like, but I've also seen a lot of Arcanes that had various niggling issues. I've never seen a Helix that didn't track.
Right. And I agree with you on that. Yeah. And I've got a Titan over there on my 33XE that I shot against scopes that were 4 times the amount at the King of 1 Mile this year. And the one thing I can say about Element is it tracks.
Yeah, always track. I have a Titan, I have a Helix, and I have some prototypes that are not released yet. So general disclaimer, so you guys know that I occasionally do some consulting behind the scenes for a few optics companies, and I do have a professional relationship with Element, right? The journalism part is separate from my professional relationship with Element. I do some reticle designs, and you'll see some Element products that I was involved with. Hopefully they'll be coming out reasonably soon. There are a few others. There's March, Swamp Fox, and some others. Some don't want me to talk about it, so that's perfectly fine. I will say this: I have once trashed the scope that I designed the reticle for. Boy, they didn't like that.
I will say there's one scope company that I will bring up that I have been working with. Full disclosure, I've been working with them this year since just after SHOT Show, and I've been helping them design a new scope that will be launched at SHOT Show this year coming up. Is with GPO, German Precision Optics.
Okay, good. So you're talking with Mike?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know Mike. GPO is an interesting company.
Yep, I got one. Unfortunately, we found its threshold. It's going back this next week and have a new one coming. But it's a really fun scope. I really like it. It's a simple reticle and it gets the job done.
Okay, good. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. But anyhow, in many ways, Vortex might still be the value king in a couple of segments, but not everywhere across the board. I am generally on board with Derek about the 5 to 25. Okay, black background, you can't see the scope. That does not help. I should not wear a black t-shirt. How can we? I can take the t-shirt off,
Here, I can.
but I don't think that's going to help anyone.
There you go.
There you go. Okay.
So
I think so. Venom is an interesting scope. When it first came out, everybody was confused why you are doing a scope $100 cheaper than Strike Eagle. It doesn't have illumination. It's a different OM, slightly narrower field of view. Of all the inexpensive high magnification scopes, the Venom is probably the easiest to get behind. It's a lot more forgiving in terms of getting behind it. It's one of the things that still separates higher-end scopes from the lower-end ones. Okay. Vortex's Razor Edge DLHT scopes, in terms of the performance you get for the money, for the weight, are the best bang for the buck in their category. Okay, because they're lightweight, right? These are crossover designs. Okay. And the Razor Gen 3 6 to 36, in my opinion, is still the best precision scope you can get for $3,000 at the moment. Is it an amazing value? Yeah, I think it's pretty good value. But the competition there is pretty stiff. I have not looked at the new Zeiss S3s yet. I have not looked at the Burris XTR Pro, which might be the value king for precision in the $2,200 range. I will shortly. There is no longer one brand where you can look at it and say, okay, in every price range where they play, they are the best value. It does not work like that anymore.
No.
Okay. Depending where you look, it might be a Vortex, it might be an Element, it might be Archon, it might be Burris. I have a very strong suspicion that the Burris XTR 3i 3.3 to 18 by 50 might be the best bang for the buck in $1,000 range, based on some prototypes I've seen, etc. But until I actually get it and put it through its paces, I can't quite pronounce that. But this market got so complicated and so diversified that there is no longer just one. What Vortex offers, just through their sheer size, you have to keep in mind, Vortex right now is easily the largest company in sporting optics world. Okay, I can't disclose exactly how large it is, but it is not close. It's not even close to being close, how big they are in terms of volumes. So what you're getting with Vortex is safety. They are so big, they're so well oiled, right? Because anything, their return rates are from the same price, about the same as anybody else in the industry, very, very close. Just because you have so many scopes out there, a good number of them have to go through the customer service. And we know that no matter what happens, you will be supported, right? Vortex is safe. Is it the only company that's safe to work with? No, Leupold has great customer service. If you want small companies with great customer service, Tract is wonderful. I really like the guys at Tract. They, for the money, they release a wonderful product. If you want a company that is consistently very high value and everything they do, Tract should really be in that conversation. I don't know if are you friendly with the Tract guys?
No, actually, I'm not. Last time I talked to anything with Track was when myself and Max from Slav Guns had Virtual SHOT Show. Other than that, they never got back with me.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to talk to them, I can hook you up. I like them. They're good people.
They make a nice scope. They do. I'm not going to lie.
These are nice scopes. And I have a few. I have the 1 to 8, and because it's not black, you will actually be able to see it. And I have a 2.5 to 15 by 44 from them, and now I plan to look at a few others. There isn't a single.
Put that one up too.
That's sitting on the gun.
I was gonna say, well, because I know that's not black, so that will.
Uh, yeah, like as I was talking, I thought of Tract and go, yeah,
Right.
if you want one brand that is consistently very, very good value, Tract and SWFA should be the SWFA sort of revamping their product line. So it's hard to find them in stock. Both of these companies basically go direct to market. You don't get them through dealers, only directly through these companies.
Yeah, it's
So they should be in a conversation.
Yeah, Track's right at the $1,700 mark. I mean, that's
The
a
4.5 to 30 by 56, that's really an excellent scope.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do PRS type stuff, long range precision, your best bang for the buck is probably in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. And it's scopes like Tract, Athlon Chronos, Delta Striker, and a couple others here and there. What I don't know is how Burris XTR Pro plays with these guys. I will shortly.
The XTR Pro is a beautiful scope. I looked at it at SHOT Show. I'm a big fan of the SR. Was it the S?
It's a SCR2.
SCR2. I actually like the SCR1 also.
Yeah, I have a lot of mileage with SCR1 and different Burris and Steiner scopes. So I've looked at XTR Pro at SHOT Show, and I've seen some prototypes before, but I basically have a rule that I do not recommend scopes unless I've spent significant amount of time with them.
Mm-hmm.
The way I review scopes drives the manufacturers nuts. I mean, what they all genuinely like is send a scope to some YouTube influencer, and in about 20 minutes you get the review that says it is the bestest, the greatest, the most wonderful, and you can pretty much replace sliced bread with it. I don't do that, right? Unless if I recommend something, I spend time with it. So until I spend time with it, I can't flat out say.
I will say the one scope I have out of all my scopes I have back here that I've spent the most time with, there's two scopes: the 5 to 25 by 50 Right-On X5 Conqueror,
It's such a nice scope.
and my Element Optics Titan 5 to 25 by 56.
Mm-hmm.
Now with that particular scope, I've done out past a mile on two different rifles.
Nice.
So for a sub $1,000 scope, you're getting great tracking.
Mm-hmm.
The glass is fairly well for the price, and you get a decent amount of elevation. I think you get about 27.5 mils of elevation. Mm-hmm. If you're a mil guy, sorry, I'm not MOA, but the scope does really well, and I can't say enough about it. I can compete with it. I have, like I said, I have the next Titan coming soon. I'm going to be putting that on a PRS rifle, and we're going to see how that plays out.
I have the Element Titan 318 by 50 on an accurate 22, where I try to shoot fairly far away, so I get to use most of those 43 mil radius available elevation, and the damn thing actually tracks. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, I think I might look into track torque later down the road.
You should. And once again, like if you need an introduction, I'll introduce you to them. They're good guys.
Okay.
And they make nice stuff. And once again, with small companies, I really, really look how well they stand behind the product. Tract's customer support has been personal and basically flawless.
Very nice.
Element, a few times when somebody needed customer support, has been good. And generally the level of customer support has really gone up. But Track guys have been above and beyond. And the AS scopes don't really break all that much, so they can actually dedicate a lot of resources when they do. Oh, this is kind of a nice one. Horus reticle. Nice if you're launching torpedoes. I haven't heard that one. This is a very good observation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. This is funny. Billy Truth be told. Grendel, is that like grandma? No. I'm a huge mythology nerd, so that one kind of gives me a chuckle. Grendel is if you have not seen it, as one of the original monsters of Norse mythology.
Okay.
Okay, that's actually an interesting point. But I like the Athlon reticles. So Athlon has really strengthened a lot of their reticle game lately, not without a few missteps,
Okay.
but generally the stuff. Then later they was it APLR5, whatever, or APRS5 or something like that. Reticle, that the newest one they have, is an absolutely competent modern precision reticle. Athlon doesn't get a lot of credit for this because they've been around for a little bit now. They're quite ubiquitous and they do really well. But they really pay attention. And every time they introduce a new product, it's better than the one before. And they do stand behind their stuff. So Athlon is not a company to really be underestimated. In many ways, when you talk about a few companies here and there, many new companies are started by people who used to work for other companies, and they were just dissatisfied and had the connections with OEMs and moved off sideways and started their own thing. The guys who started Athlon used to be with Bushnell, right? They moved off, started their own thing, and honestly, I think Athlon in optics world might be bigger than Bushnell now. Tracked guys, both of the guys used to be with Nikon, and they just at some point got dissatisfied with it and just went and started their own thing, and they're doing better than Nikon ever did in terms of quality scopes, right? So don't underestimate Athlon. They do good things. They're expanding. I really like, I have an Athlon tripod here that I've been messing with. That's the big one. It's steady. It shoots. I mean, it's heavy, but it's robust, and it's easily the best bang for the buck, right? So Athlon is going places. I think that's the next company that's poised to become a big optics company. They're already pretty big. I think they're poised to become a seriously big optics company. Well, that's actually an interesting observation. So that's answering the question on bang for the buck for the optics. Vortex would probably never make a scope that can beat the value of SWFA SS at $300. Well, $300 is a fixed 10 power scope. I don't think anybody's planning to make a fixed power scope to compete with SWFA anytime soon. I think they have that niche to themselves. It's not a huge niche, and they own it. But if you want robust for not a lot of money, yeah, that's the best. But fixed power, 10 power scope is limited. So you kind of have to look at it in that way.
True.
Let's see. All right, I'm looking through. Remember I mentioned a proof research barrel? Got a proof steel barrel for $260 last month. I actually got one too. I have it in the garage. Sub MOA for most factory loads all day. I'm very impressed. I haven't built anything with it yet. I will eventually. Probably build an AR for one of my kids. Normally, you can often find that barrel for 400, 450, and I have only heard of one proof research barrel that didn't shoot. And they promptly replaced it. Oh, Jesus. As a high master service rifle shooter, I hit a 2 MOA 10 ring 97% of the time, standing, sitting, 200 yards, 300, 600 yards prone in a sling. So a good AR can be sub 2 MOA. A good AR can be sub MOA. If you are sub 2 MOA standing, you are a much better shot than I am. And it's not close. Shooting in nice AR, sub MOA prone, there's no magic to it. Standing, that's a different ballgame. Let's see. All right, so there is some sort of an argument happening here that I mostly missed between Billy Truth Be Told and somebody else who is doing 308. Okay? I have a couple of 308 guns. No problems there. Okay, there we go. If you can get the same ballistics out of a 7, 10, 12-inch barrel and make it an AR-10 pistol legally, you can shoulder it, that would be sick for truck and hiking. I genuinely agree with you. That's why I'm waiting for this whole brace controversy to work itself out. With the 8.6 Blackout, I didn't do very extensive load development, but I did do some supersonics out of a 7-inch barrel and out of a 16-inch barrel. And because the cartridge is generally on the bore, it is surprisingly efficient out of shorter barrels. I was pushing a 200 grain bullet out of a 7-inch barrel at about 1950, 1960 foot per second, and out of a 16, it's about 2200 foot per second. Okay. And because of the twist rate, the terminal effectiveness is there with either velocity fairly far out. That's sort of the allure of 8.6. Because of the twist enables you to run shorter barrels and not give up too much terminal effectiveness. Okay. What else we got? I think you guys need to get together and have a beer. I love 338 Lapua. Love it. I spent a lot of time shooting 338 Lapua Magnum. Like I said, I used to have a first-gen Desert Tech, and I finally sold it because finding a distance appropriate for it when I lived in California was just hard.
Right.
And shooting 338 Lapua at 600 yards is just not interesting. I almost got banned from the range because they caught me shooting out the chains that the plates are hanging on. I was just bored.
Like I said, I haven't done that one before.
I got pretty good at it.
It's fun when you bust a chain at 500 yards. It's a great thing to look at.
Like the first couple of times I did it, everybody assumed it's just an accident. But when it kept on happening, they sort of caught on that I'm aiming for the chain.
The best one is when they're like, is that thing accurate? Yeah, watch this.
Yeah, pretty much. So I had, for my Desert Tech, I had two barrels. I had a 338 Lapua Magnum, and then later I did 6.5 by 47 barrel.
Oh, geez.
So when I was doing load development for the 6.5 by 47, when I finally zeroed in the load, it was a 130 grain burger bullet.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I wanted to prove to myself that the load is truly consistent at comparatively slow pace. I put 20 rounds into a group of about 0.7 inches at 100 yards. It's about the best I can do in theory, in principle, in practice. And once I fired off that 20th shot, I basically got up, patted myself on the back, packed up, and went home. Nothing better than that was going to happen that day or that week. There are a lot of guys out there who say they're quarter MOA shooters, and they may very well be. I am not. Right? I am. You may be. I'm not.
No, I'm not a quarter MOA shooter at all. Yeah. But I love it when people say, "Oh, I have a quarter MOA gun." Okay, so shooting it from a bench is different from shooting it off a barrier or a tank trap. Because I guarantee, if you're a quarter MOA shooter off of a tank trap, I gotta say, shit, I'm gonna leave you alone.
Yeah,
but
that was prone off of a bipod. Yeah.
Nice.
I shoot reasonably well off the bench. I'm a little bit better prone. I'm actually not bad shooting off the tripod, sitting, standing, whatever. I do a lot of practice with that, but not quarter MOA or even 3/4 MOA. In a reasonable condition, if everything is working perfectly, prone, I'm about a 3/4 MOA shooter.
Okay.
And that's just what I can do. So that basically means nice bipod, no rear back, my shoulder for support. That's my sort of default operation. I'm not as consistent with that as I used to be. I've been doing a lot of other stuff since. If I was able to shoot a 20-round group that's essentially 3/4 of an MOA, that means the gun is truly accurate because it's barely adding anything to my dispersion. And 20 shots is sort of enough to demonstrate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Generally, in my world, if I'm testing gun for accuracy, my preference is to shoot multiple 10-shot groups. On smaller round counts than that, you can't really do meaningful statistics very well. But that's just me. My 338 Lapua was not as accurate as that, but also because it kicks more, I'm not convinced that I can shoot it as well. And once, so because the gun is short, I was at the range where I was shooting, I was prone between two concrete benches, and I did not stick out the barrel forward enough. It had those nice side vent muzzle brake that ended up for that one shot right in between the concrete benches. So the blast went sideways, hit the benches, and converged on a focal point that just happened to be my head. I get ringing in my ears just thinking about it. But great round. All right. So we have a discussion of service rifle scopes. I'm gonna skip that because I haven't looked at them as carefully.
Joey's actually got a pretty good question.
So Ryan is going. Mine is a 338 Edge. What is 338 Edge?
So a 338 Edge is a Wildcat. It's a 300 rum with an improved shoulder.
Okay, similar enough. Okay.
Just you don't want to be next to it when your muzzle is like, a foot from your fucking head. That happened at Night Force, and I was like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting question. Is there a place for heavy 3 to 12 by 50 scopes in today's market? I see Miopt is offering Miotech 3 to 12 by 50. I haven't seen it before, but I wonder if that power range is obsolete with 3 to 15 and 3 to 18 is available. Any opinions on? I don't know if you've seen the Miotech. I have. Any opinions on this general magnification range and stuff from a precision shooting standpoint?
Most PRS guys are going to go 3 to 15 and 3 to 18.
Well, probably PRS guys will probably go higher, actually. But
yeah, but if you're going to stay in the 50 millimeter objective area, other than a Vortex Razor Gen 2, you have to. I looked at their scopes at SHOT Show. Not bad, but the 3 to 12 by 50, maybe a good hunting scope. I'd use it for hunting or target.
Not that one. It has turrets the size of my fist.
Oh. Probably not. I'd stay away from it.
So they developed that scope originally for some Czech special forces thing, and their precision stuff was kind of within the city, so they didn't need the magnification. And they never quite marketed it very heavily. Optomechanically, it's actually a very nice scope.
I mean, if you're going can shooting down here in the Southwest or something, I'm like, yeah, 3 to 12 is going to be great, but that's kind of illegal.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there is really a good spot in the market for a scope like that now. Mm-mm. It can be used very effectively. I think people overestimate how much magnification they really need out in the real world. PRS is different. But it's very hard to market it. And they also, in my opinion, make some key mistakes in how they did the turrets. They're just enormous. I don't think that's appealing for a compact scope. The biggest reason to have a precision scope that goes down to about 3 power or so on the low end is to make it compatible with various thermal clip-ons, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Most commercial thermal clip-ons don't work optimized with a day scope that's somewhere between 2 and 3 power. Right, so that's the reason for something like that. Mm-hmm. But 3 to 12, that's heavy with the large turrets. I don't know how much space there is really for it. There are so many really excellent modern designs with a higher aperture ratio in the same general size range, the so-called crossover designs.
So one scope to go look at, blind spotter, is the Hawk Optics 4 to 16 by 50, side 1 or 2. I'm running one back there on my 22 NLR rifle. Great glass. Can't really complain about it. And being a 4 to 16, even on 16 power, I don't have a lot of that fuzziness shooting out at 200, 300 yards. And it's a pretty solid scope for what it is.
Freudian slip.
A little pricey, but good scope.
I haven't looked at the recent Hawks. It's somewhere in my list to figure that out.
So the one I didn't get to go see at SHOT Show is their new 5 to 30 by 56. I'm gonna get a hold of them, see if they'll send me out one, because I've been told it's a really nice scope, and I was really impressed with this one.
When Hawk first came to the US, it's a British company. I looked at a few of their scopes, gave them some feedback. They've been steadily getting better. They were very good for the money. Then the team they changed, and I kind of lost track of what they're up to. But I certainly need to look at it more carefully. Let's see. There's a whole discussion on service rifle. That's actually a very good observation. Where do you get the best value in optics? A reticle that you like. That's actually a big deal. Every time you look through a scope, the first thing you see is the reticle, so you have to be happy with it. That's one of the reasons why very similar scopes made by the same OEM to similar, not identical, but similar standards from different manufacturers can comfortably coexist in the market because people look through them and choose the one with the reticle they like the most, right? And this is a very, very nice and astute observation. There are people like me out there. I design reticles for a bunch of different people because they want something that is different yet designed with a purpose, right? And there must be demand for it, otherwise they wouldn't be coming back to me, right?
True.
Let's see what else. So James goes, okay, first to choose the reticle, then the glass quality to accommodate the distance you're going to shoot. That, of course, assumes that the whole thing holds zero, which in the modern market is mostly a good assumption. Well, this is actually a good question. What about the new Brownell scopes, the MPO? Well, they're not that new anymore, but they're very good. The 3-18 by 50 for $1,000 is very hard to go against. The 5-25 is nice. I think 3-18 by 50 is better against the competition. Nice Japanese scopes for $1,000. Good reticles. Brownells generally makes pretty decent stuff. Have you used the MPO at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I've heard good things about them.
You would actually probably like it. All right, what else is there? Okay. So we have people hooking up on Facebook or Instagram. All right, there we go. Mr. Chen, always good for a question. Is it true that with roughly the same cost for lenses, SFP optically would be better than FFP of the same configuration, assuming with competent optical designs? No, not really, not anymore. It's slightly easier to design an SFP scope, but the cost differences have really evaporated, best I can tell. The reticle itself is slightly more expensive to make. There's a little bit of cost difference, but it's not big. Initially, FFP scopes of similar configurations were more expensive because manufacturers could charge more, right? Because of the reticle difference, some other stuff, you can expect maybe 10% difference, but nothing very significant. 10% difference meaning comparable quality FFP scopes will be maybe 10% more expensive, unless from a market standpoint, they feel that they can, get a higher margin. Otherwise, I don't think that's gonna matter that much. Do you do anything with second focal plane scopes, Derek, or you're all FFP?
I have the Helix second focal plane. That's on my 308.
Okay.
So for hunting, I kind of like having the second focal plane. But for competition and long range shooting, I prefer the first focal plane.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. Okay. Couple of comments that Vortex has amazing customer service. Sure. And well-deserved. Vortex, from a standpoint of customers, Vortex is an amazing company. Grendel, Ilya, when and how much time have you spent behind an Arcan, and what model? Is it EP5? Thanks for the shout-out. So the Arkin I spent a lot of time with is the SH4 Gen 2. I plan to look at the EP5, but this year kind of got away from me. And I need to see if they keep carrying it, and I'll look at it early next year. My basic problem is that, as I said earlier, I take my sweet time when I evaluate scopes. So if I see a particular product, if a particular manufacturer rotated their product lines and discontinuing things after 12 months on the market, I'm disinclined to spend a lot of time on it, because by the time I'm ready to issue reviews and it's discontinued, it's kind of a waste of my time. But the SH4 Gen 2, the 4 to 16 that I've been messing with, I actually like it's a nice scope. So with EP5, we'll see if it stays. If it remains available, I will test it. This is an interesting thing, and I'm curious about your take on it, Derek, and then I have a couple of things to add. Chan, the real beauty of customer service is when you never have to deal with it, never needed to send things back. LOL. It's true and it's not. So what are your thoughts?
It would be nice, but at the same time, in the reality of, out of a batch of 1,000 scopes, maybe 100 to 150 of them are not that weren't made well, or there's going to have some issues with them. It happens. I got an Arkin back here that I had on a 6GT, did a half MOA, went back to go shoot another group with it to verify it, and the thing was shooting all over the damn place. So it's like, I gotta send that scope in.
Yeah. So statistically, everything made by man can fail.
Will fail.
Yeah, it just might take a long time. And the failures come in a couple different varieties. Some are really easy for manufacturers to find and work out, and some are really difficult. The ones that are easy to catch in QC is something called infant mortality, the scopes that fail quickly. Twist turret a couple of times, do something, and all of a sudden you can see through the damn thing, right? So they can catch all this stuff. For example, when I visited Primary Arms a little while back, I went and how to do every single optic, whether it costs $50 or $2,000 that they make. Somebody opens the box, turns all the controls, looks through it, kind of checks it out before it gets sent out, which adds cost, right? But they QC everything, and and they catch these infant mortality cases. What is hard to catch is gradual deterioration over time, something that only happens after the scope has been in use for a little while, abused for a little bit. Most manufacturers, especially on the high end, they do extensive torture testing on production level prototypes. It's one of the reasons their development cycle is so long. But statistically, some percentage of scopes will always fail simply because it is impossible to catch 100% of the stuff for the price that you're willing to pay. If you are willing to pay $20,000 for a rifle scope, it could be made perfect where you have an extremely high probability of nothing failing. But you're not. And the manufacturers are forced to find this compromise between quality control. They try to do the best engineering possible, maintain good enough quality control, and then they have to have a service department because some number of things will fail. I've seen stuff fail, I think, I've even seen a couple of Agent Ages go back, the $5,000 scopes. Okay. A friend of mine had an Agent data that needed to go back. When he sent it back, the president of the company called him to tell him that he received it, he's personally looking at it. Because when you have a small boutique company making really fancy scopes, you can do this kind of shit. Okay. The more scopes a company sells, assuming the same failure rate percentage-wise, let's say 2%, 2 to 5% is not uncommon, depending which company it is. The more scopes a particular company sells, the more of them will end up going back in terms of the absolute number. And when we live in the world of the internet, one of the things that you will notice is that when people hit the internet, you usually talk about scopes that failed, not the ones that have been working for 10 years without any issues. Somehow we all love to complain. So if you look at the customer service stories, they will be, for obvious reasons, really dominated by larger companies, by Vortex, by Loophole, Sig, etc. Okay? The ones that sell more scopes. On top of it, you also have to keep in mind the mix. The cheaper the scopes, the higher the return rates. The one exception to this that I know of is for the time being, is probably Element. Because I'm not seeing an obvious return rate difference between the $400 Helix and the $900 Titan. They seem to QC them really, really well and hold them to really good standards. I do know one of the things they demand from the OEMs is a little bit different than what everybody else does, right? But that's sort of their proprietary stuff. But by and large, if you have a company like Bushnell, for example, that makes some XRS3s, which are generally quite robust, and a bunch of blister pack $40 scopes, the company-wide return rate is going to be comparatively high because the blister pack scopes are crapping out. But so you have to look at the return rates based on a particular product line. And I'm not in particular good relation with Bushnell, but DMRs and XRS scopes, they're robust. Return rates as good as anything else out there. The $50 scopes though die. Vortex is in the same point, right? So they sell so many scopes, there are always return stories on everything. But if you do some statistics, there are more crossfires being returned than razors, and not by significant and not by small margin, right? Because at higher price ranges, the engineering is different, the quality control is different. Never needing to send things back is only possible in two cases. Case one, you got really lucky. Case two, you mounted it on a gun and never touched it again. That's pretty much it. If you use it, eventually it's going to die. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's interesting. Talk about pupil distance. Are you talking about eye relief, or what do you mean by pupil distance? I'm kind of curious. Could you, if you don't mind, please clarify. What about Sig optics? They have a 4.5 to 30 by 56 on electronic level. That the LPO that military went with any good? So the electronic level is in the Tango 6 line. It works, it works just fine. I've tested that. No real issues. It's a nice Japanese scope. It was a little heavier than I like, but it's a nice design. The LPVO that military went with is a Tango 6T 1 to 6 by 24. They won 2 contracts with it. One of them was for this DMR type scope. The reticle is called DWLR. I actually tested it and I wrote about it fairly extensively. I liked it. It's a nice scope. Japanese parts assembled in Oregon. Worked well. Nice, modern, low power variable. Can't say anything bad about it. The reticle, the reticle was designed by the military, so it's their own reticle. SIG did not have any take on it. It's not my favorite design. I had side by side that SIG and the Psi 6, the 1.6 by 24, and I preferred the Psi 6 because I like the reticle more. Going back to the comment we had earlier, but that's pretty much it. Have you played much with 6 scopes, Derek?
What was it? The one of the whiskeys I bought for my son. It was a second vocal plane.
Okay, that's a hunting scope.
Yeah.
Perfectly respectable.
Yeah, solid scope for the money. For $150 scope.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Have you ever used any Delta scopes?
No. Heard the Delta Striker is a nice scope.
Yeah, I have a couple. So Delta is another company I do occasional consulting for, so I'm friendly with them. They're not very big in the US. But the Striker is a related design to Athlon Chronos, tracked toric 4.5 to 30, etc. Same general family. Their reticles are a little bit different. Their quality control is quite good. Delta Javelin is the step down from the Striker. And if I understand this correctly, it's very, very similar to the Athlon Ares ETR. So I expect it to be a nice scope, but I have not really spent any time with it. I need to ping them and get my hands on one. Once hunting season is over, I really need to look at the Javelin and a couple other things from Delta. Have you ever played with ATN digital scopes? I assume the technology hasn't developed enough to make a scope that looks as good as a high-end glass. But is this the next step in optics evolution? I actually have one here somewhere. I've played with it, and it's better than I expected. It still is not a replacement for the higher-end glass.
Agreed.
It has a lot of interesting features. It's nice to record stuff and all that. So for gun bloggers, it's actually great. You want to record your shots and all that sort of stuff. For practical use, it's very hard for me to get over the fact that if the battery dies, I got nothing. For general purpose hunting and stuff like that, as long as you keep the batteries charged, it's actually a very competent design. It's reasonably capable. But it's going over the psychological threshold of I must have batteries is difficult. We have the same issue with thermals, right? But thermal is something different. Here, we're talking about a comparatively conventional rifle scope, so it becomes a more difficult argument. Is it the next step in optics evolution? I don't think so. I think the next step in optics evolution, if you look at Vortex's XM157 scope, which fuses electronic and a traditional optomechanical design, that's the next step. When that proliferates into civilian-friendly designs, that's going to be a big thing. Okay. That can essentially fuse the digital capabilities of something like the ATN and a conventional scope. So if the battery dies, you're not dead in the water. I have an article next summer of one of the Guns and Ammo magazines coming out. So when it's out, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But that was kind of fun. It had to be approved by the Army and all that. All right, so no pupil exit. I still don't know. Are you talking about the exit pupil and the size of it, or what is the actual question? I'm kind of confused here. Or are you talking about what's called the eye box, how easy the scope is to get behind, or how to figure out the exit pupil size, the different ramifications? I'm not really sure.
Well, he's got another question: is what does that do for older high-end scopes?
Where is that?
9:37 p.m.
9:37 p.m. It was a while back, so I missed one. Let's see. Let's see what we got. 9:37 p.m. Okay, 9:39, 9:38, 9:38, 9:37. Where did you find it?
I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat as well. Okay, I'll look. Try to verbalize the whole question in one chat post so that I can figure out what you're asking. Okay, I have had decent luck with ATN, but prefer others if I hunted night more. Look, if you're hunting night, you need a thermal. ATN makes a decent one. Pulsar is probably better for the money. Steiner Burst jumped in. They're doing a good job. Best bang for the buck with thermals right now is probably bearing optics. ATN is competitive, I think. But I think you'll do better with bearing for now. Other people are jumping in. Let's see. Okay, DLO, the Vortex HD LHT 4.5 to 22. Have you had time with the Gen 3 6 to 36? Yes, on both counts. Have you seen the HD LHT, Derek, the 4.5 to 22?
That's the hunting scope that they made, right?
It's a crossover scope, so you can. It's like perfect scope for an RL hunter.
Yeah, it's a second focal point, isn't it?
No, it's a front focal plane.
Oh, that's a front focal. Okay.
So the 3 to 15s are second focal plane, 4.5 to 22. Front 4.5 to 22 HDL-HT was my scope of the year in 2021 when they released it. So I'm a little biased in the sense that when they first designed it, they called me up and said, "Here, and leave us alone." Because I spent a decade badgering them, trying to get them to make me a lightweight front focal plane scope.
Nice.
And then I went hunting with it, and the very first kill with that scope on a rifle was mine. It was a Barbary sheep at 450 yards. I may have mentioned it a time or two in the past. So I'm very fond of that scope. It sits on my favorite 308, on the 308 fix that I have. It's not going anywhere. It has never shifted zero. It's accurate, it tracks. And it weighs 21.7 ounces, which is quite remarkable for that magnification range and that level of performance. The Gen 3 6-36 for the time being sits in my precision rimfire. And once again, so the HDL-HT I had about 6 months before introduction, and the Gen 3 I had a couple months before introduction. I like both scopes quite a lot. I think they offer a lot for the money. I think it's a right step in terms of reticles. I did not like the EBR7. The reticles on these two are more to my liking. And the optomechanical design is very solid. But a month and a half ago, I spent a week with Vortex at their facility. So one of the things I did, I went into a place where they do final QC on their scopes, and they had, 60, 70 Razor Gen 3s for a couple of different batches. There's been a big hoopla about inconsistent turrets and all that. I wanted to see if they've kind of corrected it. They have. I sat there for a long time twisting turrets on every Gen 3 6-36 I got my hands on, which was a few dozen, and they were consistently good. That's the kind of thing that generally makes it easier for me to recommend the scope. So I have one that I've worked out very extensive, and I've twisted turrets and looked through a few dozen more. It's an unusual opportunity. But I'm very fond of both of these designs. Okay. Okay, so right. So the follow-up question to that. Long-term opinion on HDL-HT is very, very good. I've had it longer than just about anybody else outside of Vortex, and it hasn't skipped a beat. More importantly, I've recommended it to a bunch of people, and no one has yet complained to me that I steered them wrong, which is important. I try to keep tabs on this kind of stuff. And as I said, I've had quite a lot of time with the 6-36, and I like it. It's actually an interesting argument. So personally, I would never want a 3-12 or a 4-16 when there are 3-18 or 2.5-10 or 2.5-12 that are very lightweight. What are your thoughts, Derek? Configurations. Do you have some sort of minimal spec for the type of configuration you'd want in a scope?
I mean, I have the 4-16 Arkin, and I have a 4-16 Hawk. I'm actually quite happy with the 4-16 range myself. 3-18, like I said, I got one coming. 2.5-12, I really don't have any real world knowledge or experience with it. 3-12s, I played with a couple of them back when I was working at a shop. But, I mean, I look at scopes in this. You got to find the one that you like the most. I used to be a Sig 6-24 guy, and I turned into the 5-25 area where I'm comfortable. So
it sort of comes down to what you're going to use it for, right?
Yeah.
It's really just that.
And what's your preferences?
Correct. For example, I would never want a 4-16. Well, go pick up a 4-16 by 42 Attacker F1. It's a great little scope, right? So it just depends on what you're looking for. My opinion on magnifications has changed a little bit since I started doing more stuff with thermal clip-ons, because there you really want something that starts at 2. That's one of the reasons I'm about to do a test on the Blackhound Emerge 2 to 12 by 44. Yes, I know you love Blackhound.
Actually, I helped design the Emerge line.
Good for you. I'll let you know how it works out momentarily.
Yeah, I wish I had one.
I don't have one yet. It's on the way.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, but anyhow, the reason I want it is the true power on the low end plays well
Right.
with clip-ons. If you're not dealing with a thermal clip-on, what you need to figure out is what you want on the low end, because what happens is out in the real world, high-end magnification is ultimately not that critical. Magnification is multiplicative. That means the difference between 2x and 4x is equivalent to the difference between 10x and 20x, right? So when you think of a 3 to 12 versus 3 to 18, is a big difference between 12 to 18, but it's roughly equivalent to the difference between 3x and 4.5x, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's you have to divide them. So it's not as huge of a difference as you think. And then somewhere earlier there, I think Chen mentioned, what if you want a scope that's very short? If you want a scope that's very short, a 3 to 12 is easier to design a high quality short scope than a 3 to 18. So it's really situational. It depends on what else is there. If it's the same size, same optical performance, same mechanical performance, same price, yeah, take a 3 to 18 over 3 to 12, absolutely. But the real world never works like that, right? It's never quite that cut and dry. Okay. What is the background of Hawk Optics? I think they're all OEM in China, right? At the moment, yes. So all of the scopes are Chinese, but they've been doing stuff in China for a long time. And historically, they've done quality control pretty well. But Derek is more up to speed on the modern Hawk stuff than I am. When I first started looking at them, the Frontier was actually a Japanese-made scope, but then they discontinued it. They had a very nice 4 to 16 by 50 Japanese Frontier, but then they discontinued it, and the rest of their stuff was made in China. Do you know anything about their background?
With their new scopes, with their newer 34 millimeter tubes, I don't know where those ones are made.
They're all Chinese. No, that I know, they're all Chinese. Hawk, being a British company, started out in the airgun world, and then they got into US. Their first big expansion was with crossbow scopes, and then they started doing more stuff for centerfire. So their reticles kind of evolved, but they tend to be a little bit on the thin side because they come from the airgun background. That's what the Brits know better. But overall, I think they're pretty competent scopes.
They're a good optic. I mean, I was almost thought about taking that 4 to 16 off and putting it on my 308.
Yeah. All right. Mr. James is going to sleep. Good night. As far as the replay for this, yes, this stays as a video on both YouTube and Facebook. So there is a replay. We've been here for almost 2.5 hours. So I want to look through the comments, and then we'll be wrapping up as well. I'm supposed to work tomorrow, allegedly. Let's see. Okay, there is still a discussion of which exact caliber goes for which once in a lifetime animal. This I already answered. Yeah, that's interesting. So, Mr. Chen, so thought ARC and customer service is good until I got first SH4 and had to talk to customer service. The rep was very defensive and said I don't know anything about scopes. Then I sent it to Ilya. That really made me rethink about ARC. And I still have that scope. I put in the column trying to find the problem that you were mentioning. I don't see it yet. So I'm throttling down the objective and trying to see if I can diagnose it. I'll have it figured out shortly. And then we'll see if you were right or if you were right or not. Okay. Oh, it's actually ATN's digital sensor is very long in the tooth. That is correct, but it still works.
True.
Okay, and Chen is saying that I need to have a couple of drinks to understand what true, be the truth be told is really saying. That may be true, but all I got today is coffee. Sorry, guys. I've been training a lot and hiking a lot for the hunts. We did a 5 mile hike with the 1,600 foot up and 1,600 foot down. So my legs are kind of shot. That means no alcohol for a little bit.
That sounds like it was a load of fun.
I really enjoyed it, but I was tired. I mean, I went there with a friend of mine who is 15 years younger, is in good shape and all that. I'm a 300 pounds middle aged engineer. Going uphill is not something that is easy for me to do. I did it. I came out of it, but by the time we already got done, when we were already on the flat, my legs did cramp up. That was very irritating. Have you tried the new Citroen S8 5 to 40? It's damn amazing, but also damn heavy. Have you seen it, Derek? You might actually like that scope.
No, I don't know much about Cytron, to be honest.
Japanese scope, they are sort of a house brand of one of the largest Japanese OEMs. They can make exceptionally nice stuff. Optomechanically, the S8 is very good. The tree reticle is a little bit odd. The non-tree reticle is very appropriate. The basic problem there, they introduced it around $3,000. At around $3,000, there's a lot of strong competition. Citroen doesn't have the brand name for $3,000. But then I saw it at around 2,000. At 2,000, it's a very, very good deal. Citroen S8, it's a 40 millimeter tube, so it's a huge amount of adjustment, and optically, it's very, very good.
I'm not even going to mention what the scope looks like.
Well, look it up. One thing Citroen did wrong, they bundle 40 millimeter rings with it, and they're very narrow. They work just fine, but they look inappropriate for a scope that doubles as a baseball bat.
That's awesome.
But like I said, optomechanical, I really liked it. It's a nice design. Okay. I think that you're drinking all day. Yes, a mineral water and coffee. That's kind of an interesting comment. I thought 10 to 20 power range would be nice for no close range shooting, but nobody will make it to a zoom scope to begin with. March has a rifle scope that's called EP zoom, IP zoom, which is like 1.5 or 2x zoom. And optically, the damn thing is amazing, but it's a very niche design and it's high magnification, so you may want to look at that. You're right, a very low error ratio like this is impossible to market. For general market, on the high end, you might be able to get away with it. For general market, it's essentially impossible to market, so nobody's going to do it. I tried. Tried to convince people. Airgun question. What scope is on your FX Impact and what's on your Leshy? I'm wondering if a PRS style 6x36 is overkill for the FX. Do you shoot airguns at all?
No.
You're missing out. It's a lot of fun.
Maybe next year I'm looking into getting into it.
Well, since you're talking to FX guys, talk to them about airguns. I know a lot about airguns. So, I've actually been using both the Leshy and the FX Impact to test scopes because they're very, very accurate and fun to shoot and quiet. So I can do a lot of stuff quietly. And to get initial tracking and stuff like that. The FX right now has a now somewhat older Hilux scope, the 5 to 20 Pentalux. It's actually pretty decent. And the Leshy is what I'm finishing the testing of the Arcan SH4 Gen 2 on right now. Whether the 6 to 36 is an overkill for the effects, it depends what you're doing with it. If you're doing precision, on precision air guns and on precision rimfire, I actually like high magnification, right? So that's why I have a 6 to 36 on my precision rimfire. And the effects that I have might get a March 5 to 42 when I'm done using it to test stuff. Because I'm shooting at very, very small targets compared to the moderate ranges. And at moderate ranges is where you can actually use that high magnification. Out here where I live, it's so much mirage and heat shimmer and all that sort of stuff that when I'm looking at something far away, using 36 power is not very common unless I'm shooting early in the morning. You're now in the Southwest too, so you could probably attest to that. I'm usually shooting on lower magnifications. The only time I really dial up is when I need to shoot at something, the size of this at 100 yards. And that's something you typically do with air guns or rimfires.
Gotcha.
So
I have not been able to go out shooting since I got here. Hopefully I'll change that next week.
yeah, you need to change that. Like I said, you need to do a field trip. I have a destination in mind.
We'll talk
But
later.
High-end air guns are not cheap, and the precision you get with them is quite remarkable. If you have the finances, I would put a nice scope on the FX. Let's see what else we got. Mr. Hydrographics is going to sleep. Good night, Ryan. And I still have no idea what Billy Truth Be Told is saying. I think I'm just gonna give up. Sorry, man. I tried. Get an FX Impact. They replaced my powder burners for fun. I have an FX Dreamline. I don't have the Impact. Maybe I'll get the Impact some point. But for what I need to do, the Dreamline and the Lasher basically take care of everything I want to do with air guns for the time being. And I love how you guys are going for 2 hours now. Actually, it's 2 hours and 31 minutes now.
Right.
So I am probably gonna start wrapping this up. Derek, if you have any parting thoughts, now's the time.
Thanks, guys, for joining. Thank you, Ilya, for letting me come on tonight. It's been a while since I've done a live stream.
We need to do this more.
I will be doing more now that I got the new studio and the workshop open up here and the office in the house. I'll be able to do this more. It's going to be a little hard with the new job coming up with the holiday season, but we'll definitely have to get together at a shot show and do a live stream together.
Yeah. Okay. There's one final question I'm going to answer. Before that, Derek, so thank you for coming on. I kind of miss having guests. I've done quite a few in a row that was solo. For some things where I have a long lecture prepared, that's not a bad thing. But today's topic, it was nice to have a discussion. So I appreciate you spending the time.
No
and
problem.
we need to do these more. And I'm going to answer one last question. And we'll go night-night. At least I will. Since you shoot so much 6.5 Grendel, do you have a favorite reticle for holdovers and bullet drop? No, not really, because I'm a mill guy. I can use any decent mill reticle with reasonable ease. And for Grendel, you need 12 mil radians, basically. You need a 12 mil radian tree if you want to use the reticle only. The way I shoot, I hold with the reticle inside of about 500 yards with a Grendel, roughly. And beyond that, I dial. So in practical terms, any reasonable 3 reticle works just fine. A really good example would be the XLR2 reticle in the Vortex Razor DLHT 4.5 to 22. I do like 3 reticles because at closer distances, I can shoot with them ultimately faster. while at longer distance, I prefer to dial for elevation and I hold for wind. Personal preference, to each his own. Okay. All right. With that, thank you all. I do appreciate your time. Good questions. This was a fun one. I am sorry I couldn't figure out the Mr. Truth Be Told question. It's not common for me to not be able to figure out what people are asking me, but every once in a while, things are beyond my ability to comprehend. Thank you all, and good night.